everyone, this is Sara Minges with Playful Awareness, and October is National ADHD Awareness, Sensory Processing Disorder Awareness, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And in honor of that, I wanted to take a few moments and talk a little bit about ADHD, as there seems to be quite a level of information that maybe isn't accurate about ADHD. So I just want to give you some information about that and then some tips, tools, and hacks to help you if you have ADHD or a child with ADHD. So the first is that ADHD is truly a disorder. It's a brain disorder that affects our executive function. So that affects our ability to focus and concentrate and listen and think and follow through with tasks and remember things and keep track of stuff, such as schoolwork and pens and notepads and books and backpacks, and it affects our ability to then get that to school and then turn in our homework. It also affects our ability to have the mental energy to continue to do housework or those homework tasks or those tasks at work that are really uninteresting and boring. It affects whether or not we can find our keys in the morning. It affects how we keep our house organized. Do we have a special drawer for all of our tools? Or is it just kind of littered all over the house and good luck finding it? That's really kind of an indication that there's something going on, that that person could in fact have a significant symptom of ADHD. So I just want to share that a little bit, that it is a true cognitive disorder. It also affects our sensory processing. Half of everyone that is diagnosed with ADHD also has a sensory processing disorder. And there's a big connection between ADHD, sensory processing, and autism. So it's important that we are recognizing that and having some early intervention to help make our brains work as efficiently as possible. ADHD is not something that we outgrow. We can outgrow it, although many people also have ADHD and ADD as an adult. And instead of bouncing off the walls, they look very restless or have difficulties meeting work deadlines or responding to that email or picking up the phone and responding to that phone call or voicemail, or prioritizing, or time management, or making our boss happy by following through with our commitments. Those are all signs of someone who's struggling. And it's really important that we're understanding what the ADHD brain really does. So executive functioning happens in the prefrontal cortex, and that's one of the last parts of the brain to develop. So if the other parts of our brain have not developed sequentially in order, then that part of our brain is probably going to have some chaos and some difficulties processing information. So it's really important that we're aware of that. Also, it's important to understand that people with ADHD, they just work a little bit differently. They don't look at things from an A, B, C, D perspective. They look at it from an A, Z, Y, X, L, M, C, Z kind of an approach. It's what their brain gravitates towards. So novel, engaging, interesting ideas is what our brain actually wants to go to. That's what makes it really hard to focus and complete our homework without there being a lot of starts and stops. And it often is frustrating because we see our classmates or our coworkers be able to be very efficient with their time and not spend as much time on those tasks that we really don't want to do in the first place. So it's really important to remember that, and telling someone with ADHD to just try harder really sends them into a tailspin, because it's not that they're not trying hard. In fact, they're probably trying harder than most people they know. It's that their brain just works differently, and they often feel like they're a round peg trying to fit into a square hole. So it's really important to work with that person to figure out at what times of the day are they're most productive. What are some visual reminders that can help them to stay on task. For kids, it's often putting notes on the fridge or a post-it note on the front door, large post-it note, to really help them to keep track of what they need to do and what they're there to accomplish, just because their brain does not have the sequential processing that other people's brains do, and they need some help from their environment to make that happen. So that part's really important. It's also important to remember that having ADHD is kind of like watching a TV movie of your life. And about every 5 minutes, the channel gets changed on you unexpectedly. So you're trying to catch up to where everybody else is at, knowing that you've lost some information, some very valuable information. That's kind of what that's like. And it takes about 3 times as much energy to get out of bed in the morning for someone with ADHD than someone without. So it's really important if you have that coworker that tends to run late. It's not that they're trying to be disrespectful or unprofessional. It's that they really are doing the best that they can. They are just overwhelmed with all the information that they're getting, and it's probably a work in progress for them. Some days are better than others. So it's important to cut them a little bit of slack. And if you have ADHD, cut yourself some slack. Sometimes you're going to drop the ball, and that's okay. That's what happens. But very few things are life and death situations, and it's okay on occasion. If the ball gets dropped, it's going to be okay. So it's important to remember that too. It's important to remember that, or to know that for preschoolers that have ADHD, they first develop symptoms between the ages of 3 and 6. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is my go-to for the latest research and guidelines on ADHD and child-related information and disorders, really recommends that medication not be used for preschoolers and kindergartners up to the age of 6 that have ADHD. That is actually more effective for behavior therapy than medications. Medications do not create new brain cells. However, behavior modification, structured schedules at home with some fun flexibility built in are actually much more effective than medication. And playing, the act of just doing something fun, engaging, enjoyable, actually activates the part of our brain that we need for focus and concentration and learning and follow through and all of that great stuff. So it's important to think about that as you're going through your day. If you have a child with ADHD or you yourself struggle, make sure you're giving yourself breaks throughout the day to do something fun, engaging. It helps to recharge your batteries. And then when you have to do this task you really don't like, it makes it a whole lot easier. Sometimes parents will ask me, well, how could my child possibly have ADHD? They just don't want to learn. They just don't want to do their homework because they can sit in front of the TV or those video games for hours and have their full undivided attention. But the moment you turn that off, there's a tantrum. Or the moment you turn that off or ask them to do their homework, they're overwhelmed and don't know where to start. Well, part of the reason for that is video games and TV, they tell a story. They allow us to get emotionally connected to the characters in the stories. So the emotional part of our brain is getting activated. Plus, oftentimes it's loud, noisy, there's action, lights, volume at different levels, enough to capture our attention. And there's this idea of we want to win. When we're playing something fun, engaging, a video game, and we lose, we want to start all over. Or we want to get to that next level and keep on going. So it's really important to remember it's not that they're trying to be a pill. It's that their brains just work differently. So some things that are really helpful for kids and teens with ADHD is giving a lot of transition time and letting them know when they will need to transition, giving them a 5-minute warning and then a 1-minute warning. And then also giving them more transition time between dinner to chores or chores to bath to bedtime. And really do that. And then also limit those technology devices. I know it's really hard, parents. That includes TV, loud music, iPad, YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, all those things that we all really enjoy. It's really important that you turn that off an hour before bedtime, because your child's brain, or your brain on that has an issue with ADHD, well, those our brains struggle with turning themselves off or winding down. And so the more that we can help our brains out, the better. And research has shown when we go to bed at the same time each night, when we turn off all the extra stuff, it makes it a lot easier to fall asleep and get good, restful sleep. So it's really important to consider that. Make sure you're having unplugged play, time for your kids to just do fun stuff with you, whether that is creating a fort with the pillows downstairs in the entertainment room like I used to do as a kid, or playing hide and go seek outside, or drawing pictures, or telling a story as a family, whatever that might be. But it's really about engaging together without any electronic devices. So that's really helpful. It's also helpful that if your child is diagnosed with ADHD, that you might want to consider them also having a sensory processing evaluation, which can be done by a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. And that will give you a sensory diet, things that you can do to help their brain work more efficiently. When we have sensory processing issues, it means that the input, our sensory input, is not getting to the brain, and we're not getting the messages effectively or consistently. That's essentially what that is. And physical therapy and occupational therapy can go hand in hand with play therapy to really help make your brain work as efficiently as possible. So that's extremely important as well. Kids with ADHD don't just grow out of it. It really is a neurological condition that poses all sorts of challenges depending on your age. Some symptoms that adults have with ADHD is difficulty paying their bills. It could be because they're spending too much. It could be because they meant to sit down and pay the bills, but they forgot when they were going to do that, and then other things got in the way and they weren't consistent, and there wasn't follow through. And then they get a notice, and then, they have a moment of, that's right, I should have paid that. So sometimes that happens. It could be, like I said earlier, getting to work on time. It can also be in your couple relationships, interrupting your partner, getting so excited to talk that you forget to stop and listen to your partner. It could be getting distracted so easily that even though you're in the moment, 5 minutes later you're off, focus on something else. So that can really cause a problem during date night, or even having a conversation about parenting with your co-partner, your co-parents, regarding your kids. So it's really important just to think about how ADHD might be affecting you, and that it's not just a kid disorder. And ADHD tends to run in families. So if you have a child that has ADHD, it's very possible that either you or someone in your family also has symptoms of ADHD as well. So it's definitely important to get that checked out. And I hope this has been helpful today. One thing that's helpful with those lists is to not make those lists so detailed of things you got to do all day that you get overwhelmed. It's prioritizing. What are the top things you have to do today, or you'd be in serious trouble? So to really think about that, I'm going to post an article on our webpage this afternoon, going into more detail on some of these items. So definitely check that out, where you can find us on the web at playfulawareness.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So definitely check that out. I hope this has been really helpful. If you or anyone you know is struggling or just needs some resources or information, please reach out to me. I can be reached at 913-244-8786. Again, this is Sara Minges, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.